Hi guys, welcome back. In this video, we're going to be discussing the difference between equity and efficiency, particularly focusing on the trade-off that exists between equity and efficiency. Now, we have already studied economic efficiency in our microeconomics course, and we learned economic efficiency occurs when outcomes are optimal and those goods and services are produced that provide the most benefit at the lowest possible cost, right? We also talked about efficiency is concerned with the optimal production and the allocation of resources given the existing FOP and producing them at the lowest possible costs, right? While equity, we studied in the previous video that equity is concerned with fairness and how fair your distribution of resources is throughout society. While efficiency would be concerned with how efficient the distribution and allocation is in society. Now, we studied also that free markets and a free market economic system maximizes efficiency by creating economically efficient outcomes without any wastage of resources. We studied two different types of efficiencies, allocative and productive. And in free markets, you don't even have any sort of inefficient means of production as well. So you have productive efficiency as well. In short, you have economic efficiency. And that is why we want economic efficiency in our economy and society. And these arguments, basically, in favor of efficiency is one of the reasons behind many proposals to privatize the provision of government services. That is to privatize them, give them in the hands of the private sector, because that is going to improve economic efficiency. On the other hand, we have equity arguments. That is, for example, those arguments that favor equity, that is fairness. So, for example, the consideration that is it fair or equitable that everybody in society pays a 10% tax on their incomes. If you want to think about that, that everyone in society pays a 10% tax. Now, this might seem unfair especially for low income earners, because 10% for them would be a higher tax burden than as compared to 10% for high income earners. So maybe a 10% tax isn't fair or equitable. Now the question is that if we were to analyze that, does perfectly competitive markets lead to efficient outcomes that maximize the social welfare? Well, even if the outcomes are efficient, be it economically and socially efficient, they may be perceived by some to be quite unfair, that is inequitable. For example, the richest 1% of the families in the world control more than half of the total income in society. Now, is that fair? Well, some may say it is. After all, many of these people have worked hard to get that money or had skills that were highly valued by the market. Others may say it is not fair. After all, many of these people's wealth and position in life was determined by who their parents were and whether they were lucky enough to have valuable skills. Now, of course, the truth lies somewhere in between. Much of the difference in incomes across families is due to work and skill, but much of the difference is also due to luck and circumstances. And it is for that reason many would argue for a need to redistribute from the wealthier society to the poor. Indeed, every single developed nation in the world has set up massive government systems to do just that in two ways. First, through tax systems such as progressive tax system that imposes higher tax burden on the rich than on the poor. And second, through government spending programs targeted to the poor. But if you guys remember that early on in our micro course, we saw a problem that these systems run into. We studied that government interventions could be inefficient and could reduce efficiency. When the government intervenes to redistribute incomes either through taxing or spending, it can move the market away from its competitive equilibrium, resulting into deadweight losses, making society as a whole less efficient. Because we may argue that it may disincentivize work, savings, and investment among high-income earners. These taxes could definitely disincentivize work, savings, and investment among the high-income earners, because they are the ones paying the highest taxes in a progressive tax system. Their tax burden is the highest, relatively. And this would then potentially hinder economic growth, the fact that it disincentivizes work. Again, questioning economic efficiency in society. Similarly, welfare programs can also discourage people from seeking employment as they may become dependent on these programs if they are too generous, which will again potentially reduce economic growth. Again, potentially questioning the fact that whether economic efficiency really is achieved in society or not, or in the economy overall. So maybe yes, the government can help increase equity by redistributing incomes and wealth from the rich to the poor, but to do so, it may have to sacrifice economic efficiency in society. Hence, we say that government faces an equity efficiency trade off. Another example of this trade off could occur while setting minimum wage laws. For instance, setting higher minimum wage laws in the economy can enhance equity by ensuring that the poor, underprivileged workers receive a decent minimum pay. But at the same time, it might also reduce economic efficiency because it would increase the costs of production for businesses, potentially leading to higher prices then for consumers, and also potentially reducing employment opportunities as a result of higher costs, especially for the low skilled workers. It might end, in the future, it would also reduce the, potential employment opportunities, especially for workers with low skills. So hence you have a trade-off. Another example of this equity efficiency trade-off would be in education policies that the government might come up to, that the government might implement. For example, policies that are aimed at improving the educational equity, that is equity while consuming education, such as those policies could include providing subsidies or scholarships to disadvantaged students. Now, these policies could definitely enhance equity by ensuring equal access to education, right? However, they may also reduce economic efficiency if after these policies resources are not allocated efficiently, or if unintended consequences occur, or if standards are subsequently lowered by educational institutes, leading to a decline in the overall educational quality. In that case, we may argue that although yes, equity has increased, but because of the decline in the quality of education, that can also result in potential macroeconomic consequences. Overall economic efficiency has gone down. So subsidies given to the education sector to reduce the price of education so that the poor can afford is considered just and fair, hence would increase equity, but subsidies is a form of government intervention. These government interventions interfere with competitive market mechanisms, creating deadweight losses, and thus resulting in economic inefficiencies. Hence, these interventions that are aimed at improving equity might do so, yes, but at the expense of reducing economic efficiency. And hence, these interventions might distort efficient markets and result in inefficient outcomes, resulting in economic inefficiencies. So, guys, what we learned from this equity efficiency trade off is that this trade off occurs due to conflicting objectives and resource constraints, of course. Now, economic efficiency is typically referring to maximizing the allocation of resources to achieve the highest possible level of output or utility. That's what efficiency is. On the other hand, equity involves ensuring fairness and justice in the distribution of resources and opportunities among individuals or groups, right? The thing is that efforts to promote equity often involve redistributing resources and redistributing incomes and wealth and resources from those with more to those with less, which can hence result into inefficiencies in resource allocation, hence the equity efficiency trade-off. For instance, progressive taxation may discourage high-income individuals from working or investing as much, reducing the overall productivity, just like I mentioned at the start of the video. Similarly, minimum wage laws can also lead to job losses or reduced working hours or reduce work hours basically as businesses, adjust to higher labor costs, right? Although yes, it may increase, minimum wage laws may increase equity, but at the same time, it may reduce economic efficiency, right? So policies that are aimed at maximizing economic efficiency, such as reducing the level of regulations or taxes, because obviously these policies would, yes, maximize economic efficiency because you're reducing regulations and taxes, yes, definitely, but they may enhance or increase inequalities and inequities, right? By benefiting those with greater resources or a higher bargaining power. Hence, if you reduce these regulations, if you reduce these taxes and these regulations, yes, you are technically you are reducing government intervention. Yes, economists may argue that economic efficiency would go up, right? But then inequality and in fact inequity might also go up, right? So at the expense of inequity, it might be considered unfair. The distribution of resources might get unfair and unjust and may result in not only inequity but inequality as well, right? Because what will happen ultimately is, because of less regulations, who will benefit? Ultimately, people with greater resources and bargaining power, that is, the rich, will benefit, right? Hence, finding the right balance between economic efficiency and equity is very important and crucial for policymakers. Because the thing is that prioritizing one objective over the other can have significant social and economic implications. Hence, what we learn is that the equity efficiency trade off matters and is an important consideration for policymakers when making decisions about resource allocation and distribution. Achieving perfect equity and efficiency is likely impossible, right? So, policymakers must carefully consider the trade off between these two factors and decide on a balance that is acceptable to society. Finding this balance can lead to a more prosperous society with high levels of productivity, job creation, and economic growth. Right, guys? So, I'll be ending the video here now. I hope you enjoyed this video and understood the concepts as well. I'll see you all around in the next video. Until then, take care.